Let's stand as we sing, "Great is Thy Faithfulness."
The one thing that we in the committee would like to draw your attention to, for those that are staying tomorrow, we are going to have communion before lunch. That is the plan to do that at this time, to try to get everything done before lunch. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that we will try to have communion done before lunch tomorrow for those who are planning to stay for that. I believe that now is time for the CMC report. I think Brian's going to come up. He can come up, we'll have a word of prayer, and we'll turn it over to Brian and Steve. Our dear Heavenly Father, we again thank you for what we have heard so far this week, Lord, and I thank you for the time we had this morning as a group of ministers. Lord, I thank you for the brothers who shared with us yesterday, Lord, and we're so excited about what we are going to hear today, Lord, through our conference, Lord, through Joe and through others who will be sharing. Lord, I thank you for Brian and Steve and their willingness to serve us at the office, Lord, and the job that they do for us. Lord, above all, we pray that your name will be exalted and honored and glorified through everything that takes place here. In your precious name, amen.
Thank you. Just a bit of, before we begin our report, follow up from this morning, I did want to report on a couple of things that were voted on. The constitutional change regarding how RBC elects its officers passed strongly with over 95% approval, and also the RMM budget passed strongly. I don't have the exact numbers on it, but that did pass as well. Well, CMC Report. We are blessed, I believe, in having each other. I was talking to somebody as I came in, I believe it was today, although the last few days have been such a whirlwind that I'm not quite sure what day it was. And they were asking me, how's it going? Are you okay? Is everything? And I said, you know what? I am so encouraged when I come to these events and get around pastors who were about Jesus. That's what we're about. And you know, there's times in my role administratively, there's this little nitpicky thing to take care of and this thing to take care of. And I'm so encouraged and refreshed when I come and get around you brothers and we're talking about building the kingdom of God, serving the Lord together, giving our lives to it, pouring our lives into it. It's an awesome thing. So great to be here. I'm just going to talk just briefly and then turn it over to Steve, who's going to share about a lot of initiatives that are going on in CMC right now. But before he comes and does that, I want to explain a little bit what has happened. And most of you know this, that I guess it's 3 years ago now, a little over that, since I've started in this role, that previously Steve was serving in a dual role as general secretary and conference pastor. And it's incredibly hard to understand how he could survive that, but he did, and did a great job of it. But it limited his time to, in a lot of ways, just trying to keep going what we had going. And the executive board at that time, and so at that time the roles were separated, and that's when the administrative side became the executive director, and Steve continued on full-time then in the conference pastor role. And I believe, at least from my perspective, it has been good. I have so enjoyed working with Steve. I feel like our gifts complement each other. I've been able to function on the administrative side and have really been blessed by the work that he's done. And the initiatives that he's been able to start. And he can maybe say a little bit about this, but I think he's felt freed up to pursue some of those initiatives and do things. So, you know, in the office, we're excited about all these things we got going on, but realize maybe a lot of the pastors don't even know about some of the new resources that are available. So I often tell churches when and kind of how it breaks down is often I'm the one that will go meet with churches who are interested in CMC, and Steve and Phyllis do a regular visit of all the existing churches and minister there. And there's crossover there. We don't follow that strictly, but a lot of times when I'm talking to churches, one of the things that I mention is that a blessing that I've found in CMC is when I was a pastor and continuing on is that there's both the nurture side of things and the movement side of things. I guess mature and multiply, right? It's a part of it, being rooted, grounded deeply in the Word of God, but also committed to God's mission. And I see that even in our resourcing, that we're committed to nurturing pastors, leaders, churches, and also helping them move out in God's mission. And so you're going to be hearing about a lot of those resources today. Steve, why don't you come on up and take us from here?
Well, thanks, Brian. It sure has been for me a tremendous load that has come off of me for not having to track all the details in the office, and have someone fresh coming in and really grabbing hold of those. It's been a huge blessing for me, and I feel like I can function in gifts that I wasn't able to function in the previous role. So I feel like the change has been wonderful for me. The other week, I was attending the licensing service for Andrew Souter. He is a church planter in Columbus, Ohio, and we were invited. All the community pastors in the office was invited to come and participate in this informational meeting, but also it was a licensing service for him on a Sunday afternoon. And I was watching this young man up there in the front. And I was hearing the questions that were put to him as part of his licensing. And I just remembered, I went back 33 years to when that was me as a young church planter answering those questions. The commitments that I made that day and that Andrew made that day have shaped my life hugely. It changed my personal relationships. It changed my salary. It changed my evenings and weekends. I took on a multiplicity of roles because a pastor wears all kinds of hats. A huge change in my personal identity when I said those words of, I will, in answer to those questions. And because of that, because it demands so much of you, that role of a pastor, we need support along the way. Now, CMC launched a program to address this need of this huge identity crisis for a brand new pastor. Checking in is for pastors and spouses. We're doing it as couples if they're married at the beginnings of their ministries. So if you're an associate or a lead pastor, in the first 2 years of your pastoral placement, then you qualify for this program. Checking in has 3 parts. It's a retreat that we start with, a cohort of about 6 couples that we had. And for convenience of travel, we tag it on to the end of annual conference. And then they are introduced to their mentor couple who's going to be working with them over a 2-year period. The second part of that program is an individual growth plan. I came up with a checklist that all of these new pastors checked off things that they feel like they've got some strength in and then other areas of weakness. And then that new mentor couple interviews each of these couples and reviews those checklists. And they develop an individualized plan for growth and development over the next 2 years. It's a 2-year program. And the most important part then are these 2 years of mentoring. This mentor couple meets with this cohort, we call it, 6 times each year, every other month via Zoom. And the cost to participate in this program is about $300 a year or $600 total for the 2-year program. We ask congregations to pick up that cost, but there are some limited scholarships if that's needed. Everence has been very generous to us. They are interested in speaking into this group of young pastors, and we give them a few opportunities along the way. And for that privilege of speaking into it, they paid for the entire cost of the retreat, the motel, all the meals, even the child care in the facility itself. So we've got some brochures on the table out there if you want to pick some of those up. The brand new pastors who were a part of our orientation yesterday would have that same information in their packet. So I've asked Darren and Karen to come. They were our mentor couple for this first cohort. They're 6 months into it here. And they can make a few comments, and they're going to interview one of these young couples that have been in this program for the last 6 months.
I have no idea where you found that picture because I did not give that to you. But it kind of fits us.
Oh, it's Facebook.
Facebook, all right. Yeah, you got to love Facebook. Well, when Steve first contacted Karen and I about being the mentor couple for checking in, that just really connected with something we are passionate about, the next generation of leaders in the church. And we really believe in the local church, and we believe that Jesus just loves his church so much that he's going to provide gifts and place them in people for the continuing building and multiplying and maturing of the church. And so we're just blessed to be a part of that and walking alongside these new pastors. I don't know if we always do mentoring well, but we're working at it, and we're learning a lot from them as well as what they're learning from us. But it was a really easy decision for us to agree to be a part, and we just feel blessed for being asked. So, Karen, you want to share something?
Steve and Phyllis did much of the preparation and planning ahead of time, ahead of the retreat that was held after the summer conference this past year. And it made it very easy for Darren and I to come in right away and begin building relationships and trust with the group, with these new pastors, and they quickly became our friends. We spent time having long, hour-long, one-hour interviews, which was important in getting to know each couple quickly. Over the course of the retreat, there was opportunity to interview each couple in front of the group, which helped everyone bond and identify with each other's joys and struggles. We were encouraged by the vulnerability and freedom to share with each other that resulted in a tight-knit group that has continued to flourish. It was humbling and empowering for Darren and I at the end of the retreat to hear Steve and Phyllis directly speaking to the group that they were entrusting these new pastor couples to our care, and that their part with the checking in group was now complete.
So, although by the end of summer conference and then tacking on the retreat, we were pretty much all exhausted, completely exhausted, because it was pretty intense. It was just a great time, and we kind of wrapped up the retreat with a time of just prayer and sharing and communion, and it was really powerful. Also at the retreat, Brian Hirschberger shared some things about administration, which whether you like administration or not, it's an important part of pastoring. And John Showalter gave us some Anabaptist history, and Mim Musser talked about some soul care things. And so there's a variety of input during the retreat. And actually, by the end of the retreat and later that evening, there was already a private Facebook page group set up. And that's just become a valuable tool for this group as they pose questions or post struggles, prayer requests, just a lot of interaction on Facebook, and just staying connected with each other. And then as Steve mentioned, every other month we do a 2-hour Zoom conference. And part of that, we sometimes we just share about life. I've found that this has become a very relational group. They just need somebody to relate to that's going through common things is what they are. We do invite some guest contributors on occasion. I'll just mention Phil Stutzman and Furman Yoder. They came on together one of our Zoom conferences and just shared some of the things they had learned during ministry. So a variety of things we're doing together. Actually, this week we're all staying in a cabin together, which has been really cool, except I get to bed at like 12:30 every morning, and I can handle one more. So, but just a lot of good interaction. Heidi and Conrad Hertzler are part of the group, and should I introduce everybody that's in the group or not? Why don't you guys stand wherever you're at? I know probably not many of your wives are here. So Matt Pinnell's way in the back, Myron Mast, and who are we missing? Everybody else is missing. Garrett Martin and Matt Zook and Anthony Bricker. So, and their wives. But we just thought we'd ask you guys a few questions, and you can hear from them what they're learning from checking in.
Why did you decide to participate and get involved in checking in?
Well, for me, our call to pastoral ministry involved quite a drastic change for us, not only in our career or what we were doing on an everyday basis, but in our geography. We were missionaries in Africa, and culturally and all of this stuff. There's just a lot of huge changes for us. And in our previous life, we really learned the value of team and having having those around us that we could bond with, that we could connect with, and bounce ideas and yeah, discuss things with. And so when I came back, I really felt like a fish in a big pond, you know. And I knew a lot of people in CMC, but I just remember my first conference in Greenwood, Delaware, and going to the business meeting and thinking, you know, I just have no business here. I'm just way in over my head. But then when Steve came and he floated this idea of checking in, I latched onto it because I saw it as a way that I could connect with a team of other pastors that were all maybe sort of in the same boat and sort of in the same position. And so that's why I latched onto it, because I saw it as a way of connecting into the conference and being introduced as a pastor into the conference.
What I heard you just say, I heard Jerry try to do this morning, articulate what somebody else said. But you started out as a fish in the pond, and now you're in a boat with everybody else in the pond. Right?
Well, at least with a few other guys.
So Heidi, what's been helpful for you with checking in?
I think one of the things that's been very helpful for me as a pastor's wife is when you are in transition, it's easy to lose focus because everything is new and everything's different. And so suddenly you focus on this thing and you don't focus on the big picture. And all the couples are going through some kind of transition in their life. Ours is a little bit bigger than some of the others, but we're all going through a transition. And so Darren has been very purposeful in his questions, like, how is your heart? How is your marriage? How is things going with your elder team? And it's been a safe place where we can come and share and realize that maybe our focus was off a little bit because this huge thing we thought was this big problem really was only part of the problem. And we can once again get back and say, okay, number one is our marriage. Where is it at? How is our heart? And where is it at? And sometimes one of the check-ins, we had gone through a really tough period and we couldn't see anything good. But the question was, what was one thing good that just happened in the last 2 weeks? So we had to sit for a long time to find something good. But what came out of that was, it helped us reshift our focus back to see what God had done, even in amongst the struggle. And it wasn't years later, it was only a week or two later.
So Conrad, what has been helpful for you?
I would say the biggest thing that's been helpful for me is just having this group of guys that helps me realize that I'm not crazy. You know, a while back I had a question about something we do in church. It was about baptism, and I posted it on the Facebook site, and the other guys were like, yeah, I've had the same question. I'm thinking the same way. And so it's just been helpful to you know, when you have questions, to be able to ask them and have guys that are like, no, you're not crazy. We're having those same questions, those same issues. These are all things that we're trying to figure out. And that's been one of the biggest thing that's helpful for me. And the second thing, I think, is just having a safe place to talk. And I know theoretically, you know, we're all pastors. We're supposed to be safe with each other, but we know how it is with relationships. And so when having these guys that we're getting to know and these couples that we're getting to know, like the last couple of nights, yeah, we've stayed up late, but it's just so nice to have that safe place where you can just talk. I mean, we're laughing our heads off 1 minute and then we're deeply serious the next minute, just talking about the whole gamut of things. And it's just been really, really good and refreshing for us.
So we're 6 months in to 2 years. What are you looking forward to the next year and a half?
I think one thing for us, we're continuing to look forward, is to see where God continues to move this group of people, as well as us in our ministry. We see this as a start of something. Our goal is that we will be serving with these new pastors for a very long time to come, and that this isn't just a small investment for a short period of time, but this is investment in the eternity that God has for CMC. And that's just exciting to see it as being part of something bigger than just this group that we're working through right now.
So would you recommend other couples getting involved in checking in?
I would say definitely. If you're a new pastor, or you've been on in a while and you have a new person coming in, encourage them to get involved with checking in. It is just, we're not alone, and I know some of us have ministry teams that are really providing a lot of structure and support for us, but even beyond that, to see help and support coming in from the conference at large with a group of guys is just really incredible. So I would say 100% go for it if you have the opportunity.
So one thing I wanted to add yet, so some of you are going to be being asked over the years to be mentor couples. And what I found is, like, I'm really learning from them how to even interact better with my young associate pastor at home, because I hear what they're expressing, and it's just really helped blossom our relationship as I learn from them what they need from me. So it's an up, win-win, win-win, all the way around, a couple times. So thanks for the opportunity, Steve. It's been a blessing to us for sure. So.
So it's a 2-year program. They're 6 months into the first year. So this year, at the end of annual conference, we're going to start a new 2-year cohort. And I'm talking to another couple, mentor couple, and hope to get their acceptance of doing that role, and then hoping that there can be at least 6 couples to join that cohort. I've really appreciated the internship programs that I've observed at Rosedale Bible College and at Rosedale Mennonite Missions. At Rosedale Mennonite Missions, I see these, there's a few people every year, it seems like, that they send to the field as interns. They work under an experienced missionary for a year or 2 or 3. And then they also have a group of 6 interns at RMM, at the RIC, and they are extremely helpful to the running of the REACH program, City Challenge, and other programs as well. Provide a tremendous amount. And God is doing some neat things among this group, this cohort there at RMM. Then I'm seeing at Rosedale Bible College this bridge program where they've got students taking half-time classes and half-time practical experience in the community. They got lots of support in the sense of a group that they meet with regularly, coaches that meet with them individually. And it's just a tremendous program for learning, practical learning, and then processing it right there. I love the local church, though. Both of those programs kind of pull people out and bring them to a particular location where together they do an internship. But what about the local church? What about internships in the church, in the local church, or in the local community? So I have been working really hard on a program called Emerge, a 1-year program that possibly could, with some reformulation, could morph into a 2 or 3 year. But it's a part-time program. We're asking, if you're going to be an intern in this Emerge program, we're asking you to give 10 hours a week. And I know that's a lot, but there are going to be some people who are going to be willing to commit 10 hours per week for developing themselves. It has 4 parts, and I want to talk about. The first part are weekend retreats. We observed what happened in this checking in program on that retreat. It was amazing how they bonded together. One problem with this Emerge program is that they're going to be all out there in far-flung locations. They're not going to have that tight bonding experience that they can have like at RMM and RBC, and I feel really bad about that. But I want to do all I can to create at this weekend retreat that's going to kick it off, probably in August, to provide an experience that really bonds them, and then try to create some natural connections that they can have with each other throughout that time, that they're doing their internship on location, probably in their home church, and probably mentors in their home church. So when they come to the retreat, it's going to be, I'm really interested in theological education, that people get grounded theologically. So John Showalter has agreed to teach 10 hours of classroom-style teaching, Survey of Bible Doctrine 1, 10 hours of training. So we're going to start on a Friday morning and go all the way through a Sunday afternoon to get those 10 hours in, along with all the other group bonding exercises that we want to do as well. The second part, and then we'll, in the middle of the program, we're going to have another retreat in the winter, probably the first weekend in February. Both of them will be probably, well, one will be in the RBC campus, and we're not sure about the second one in the winter. The second part of the program then is practical ministry in the home church or possibly the community. And we're asking that interns will work 4 hours. 4 of those 10 hours will come in actual practical experience. So if they're in the local church, they'll work at youth ministry perhaps, if they want to focus on that, worship, small group ministry, Christian education. I'm hoping a whole bunch of people say, I want pastoral training as part of this internship, or evangelism and discipleship. But these are some of the areas of focus. Those who work in the community, I'm assuming, might find some daycare centers or public or private schools, pregnancy care centers, that sort of thing. So that's the second part of it. The third part is study. 5 hours of those 10 hours reading, evaluating what you're reading, writing out your reading responses, taking these papers then, and then they'll be meeting. The fourth part of the program is mentoring. Each intern will meet with a mentor, a local mentor, hopefully from their home church, for 90 minutes every other week. These mentors, it's very important that they be people of high integrity with lots of experience. And I want them to be involved in the process of selecting their mentor, because this is a very tricky relationship, and I want that mentor to have some input into who will mentor them. But I want to be a part of the process too, to make sure they're people of integrity, character, and experience. So we'll work together. I'll work together with each intern on that. I'm going to, at that first retreat, we're going to have several tracks going, where the tracks that are meeting with John Showalter for that 10 hours of classroom training. At the same time, I'll be meeting with the mentors and training them in their role, because it is a very tricky role that they will be playing. Phyllis and I, in our last 2 years, we've been going around trying to get every congregation in CMC meeting with, and one of the meetings that we've been having is meeting with young emerging leaders. And we've got probably over 300 people now on a list that we're working with and keeping in contact with that came out of that. And I look at that pool as very much a target for this internship program. But I'm also knowing that there are 30-year-olds, there are 40-year-olds, there are 50-year-olds in your church that would benefit from a program like this, and who would jump on it if they had the opportunity. So we're going to start recruiting soon. I don't have any paperwork to give you on this. It's all in documents, but there's going to be some information coming out. But you'll be receiving some brochures that you can use to publicize this, but I'll be publicizing it in ways as well. And be thinking yourself about mentorship and whether you would welcome this opportunity. It'd be a great commitment of time, but I'm going to be doing a tremendous amount of development as far as materials that you can use, reading assignments for all those hours they'll be reading, and how they can then, you can interact with them. That 90 minutes every 2 weeks is going to go pretty fast. That I've got some outlines that there'll be very little preparation on your part, other than just as an experienced person, you interacting with what they're reading and bringing to you, and then you, out of that, creating discussion for that 90 minutes. Any questions anybody has about how that's going to work? Okay, yeah, think about that, and hopefully we can move forward with that. We are planning for our first internship weekend to be, I think it's the 24th and 25th of August of this year. Another opportunity there's not a lot of ladies here, I think there's some other activities going on, but wives of pastors and other women in ministry, especially like CMC agency staff, are invited to this next Come Away retreat. It'll be in Goshen, Indiana at the Old Barn Bed and Breakfast, May 4 to 6. Lynette Showalter will lead that retreat. So we have some brochures on the table out there that you can pick up to look that over. We're starting to get registrations on that. Many of you are aware of that. Don't wait too long to express your interest on that. Another resource I'd like to encourage you to think about, and that is coaching. Now, coaching is a relatively new but a rapidly growing field of people helping. It's different from mentoring. It's different from consulting. It's different from counseling. Coaching is not giving advice. The coach is not approaching you from a position of authority, but they're listeners. They ask a lot of good questions, and they help you, the person being coached, to set goals and overcome obstacles in reaching those goals. Coaches provide support, accountability along the way. I like to look at it as a coach is in a car. You're looking out the front window with a coach. There's the rear view mirror that you can look about what's happened in the past. The coach is not interested in focusing on the past. The coach is fully focused on the future. Coaching can help you move forward faster. Move forward faster. Most people don't need more information. They need motivation to do what they know they need to do. Coaching can really get you on that train and get you going down the track if you feel stuck. Pastors often request help in coaching with feelings of isolation, burnout, time management, leading a staff, personal issues like diet, exercise, losing weight. First-time pastorates, lots of questions that come up there that they could benefit from a coach. And we have a number of coaches within CMC, and let me introduce you to them. Jay and Beth Shuttler are probably the most experienced people we have in our circles that I'm aware of anyways. They've been coaching for a number of years. Mim Musser has finished she is a certified coach, at least for the last year or two, and is available. I'm just completing my training. I'm within a couple of months of being certified. Dwayne Duttweiler in Holmes County is in the early stages of his training in coaching. Is there anybody else here certified in coaching, life coaching or leadership coaching? Anybody else? Okay. Luke Kapfer? And were you raising your hand? Okay. Must have been stretching. Okay, thank you for that. Andy Troyer. All right, thank you. Okay, I would just encourage you to think about whether that is a good resource for you and follow through on that. Follow through on that. Equipper, you're aware of that. We've been working at this for quite a while. It's an online video library. This is how it looks if you go to it. Videos, short, 8 to 18 minutes. I don't think any of them are over that amount. They're short. You can watch them quickly. 4 videos on preaching. Where I ask 4 people in CMC, what's the best tips you would give for a person learning to preach? Give me your best stuff in 10 minutes. And so 4 people that I really respect as preachers in CMC have given you their best stuff there. We have 4 on counseling, 8 in the area of leadership, and 7 in the area of discipleship. We recorded 4 more here at Pastors Conference, and we hope to have them on the website here this week. Let me tell you what they are. Ann Carnegie, she talked about a program in this church ministering to fractured families, and discusses a ministry a unique ministry here to children in single parent families. She's the coordinator of single parent family ministry at Locust Grove, and tells you how this program developed, why it developed, and what's happening in that program. Tremendous material. Vern Hostetler, he is giving one, he gave one on pastoral visitation. He's a pastor at Siloam Fellowship, and he gives you tips about all kinds of visiting, just regular visits that you would make for no particular reason other than just to visit someone in your church, but also those who are sick, those who are hospitalized, hospice situations, emergencies. Gives you some tremendous material in about 12 minutes. Just a great resource for you. Or if you're training, if you're feeling overwhelmed with visitation needs in your church and you need some help, Vern's video would be a tremendous resource for you in training someone else to help you in that role. You can see his shepherding heart come through. Another presenter was Brenda Zook, Parenting Extraordinary Kids. She uses a backpack analogy to sensitize the church to ministering to children who are just more. And just about any way you can think of, they're more. And she's a member of this church, but she gives some really good tips in sensitizing your teachers, your Sunday school teachers, small group leaders who are dealing with issues of kids that are just more. And tremendous insight that she gives from personal experience. And then Jeremy Miller, preaching peace in the local church. Talk about a hot topic. It is not easy to preach about peace in North America, but Jeremy does. And he gives some very helpful advice to you who are wrestling with that issue. He pastors the MCA church in Ohio. So those are coming. They're not on there now. All right. You should have a handout there, a note-taking sheet. And we're going to watch one of these Equipper videos. What time is it? What time do we need to be done? And what time is it now? 2:15. 2:15. Okay. This is a note-taking sheet. Each of these Equipper videos has a note-taking sheet that's attached to it. You can download it, print it off. That's what you have. Also, though, there's a sheet with every one of these videos. There's a lesson plan that you can teach a small group, a Sunday school class, whatever. But we're playing. Go ahead. Lynette Showalter, Waiting with People Who Grieve.
As people helpers, we often work hard at finding the right words, the appropriate scripture, the most effective technique for a certain situation. We prepare, study, memorize, and many times those preparations, guided by the Holy Spirit, bear fruit. Lies are challenged by the truth of Scripture. Roots of woundedness and bitterness are unearthed, and hidden secrets are brought to light. But when it comes to walking and waiting with people who are in deep grief, there's good and bad news for people helpers. The The good news is that what is needed most is not all the techniques, the steps, information, and didactic input. What is most craved is someone who can wait, feel pain, accept tears, and listen to the same details and memories over and over again. Because here's the thing, silence is words to the grieving. In fact, someone has suggested that if you're talking over 30% of the time when you're with a grieving person, you're talking too much. Remember Job's 3 friends? Job 2:13 says they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and nights. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. So if you stay away from a visitation or stopping by a neighbor's house because you feel inadequate with what to say, relax. Let go of the pressure of words. Just show up. I said there was bad news. Some people, helpers, find it very difficult to minister without a guideline, an outline, and clear protocol, and a lot of words. It's their structure and security. I mentioned the story of Job's friends. They started out so well. It was only when they opened their mouths that they started to do harm. We naturally want to solve problems, put puzzle pieces together, fix issues. May we be reminded of the importance of being over doing and speaking. Be a non-anxious presence, a quiet symbol of the peace of Jesus. So here are a few suggestions from my experience. There's no script for grieving. Everyone's journey is unique. Proverbs 14:10 reminds us that each heart knows its own bitterness. Don't burden a grieving person with the pressure of assuming their experience is just like yours. No one knows just how someone else feels. One person's timetable of grief is never exactly the same as another's. It is true, however, that pain and loss of many kinds can be a connector and identification. You don't have to experience exactly the same loss to know the depths of grief. But when the loss is very similar, losing a spouse in your 50s or a daughter in the prime of life or a painful ending of a job or ministry, then the comfort of others with a similar experience is often immediate and deep. When my husband Conrad and I led a grief support group at a local funeral home, the group of strangers was united in one evening. The bond of identification is powerful. Grief work is hard work, and so is walking with people in grief. It challenges our own mortality, our own unfinished business, our theology, our own trust in God. Proverbs 18:14-15 says the human spirit can endure a sick body, but who can bear a crushed spirit? When I was a volunteer chaplain at a local hospital, the few times I was called in the middle of the night, it was because there was a death. I always felt the same sense of inadequacy and helplessness in walking into a room full of bewildered family members. I could encounter anger, hopelessness, regrets, blame, despair. It was never easy. We never take this part of our ministry or friendships lightly. It's exhausting, but it's also very life-giving. Ecclesiastes 7:2 reminds us that it's better to go to a home where there is mourning than to one where there is a party, because the living should always remind themselves that death is waiting for us all. When I walk with someone who has suffered a deep loss or go to a visitation or a funeral, I often feel like I'm on holy ground. I feel inspired to live more deeply, more fully. I go home and hug my spouse tightly, write a note to a faraway child, Skype with a grandchild, or maybe seek peace in a conflictual situation. Sometimes grief is complicated and complex. Someone may die by suicide, or family members blame themselves for not seeing the signs or addressing a mental illness. Deaths that we see as untimely, unjust, caused by violence, or several family members die in the same tragic incident. And there are layers of grief. Someone has said that when we lose a parent, we lose a piece of our past. When we lose a spouse, we lose our present. And when we lose a child, we lose our future. Someone who's terminated from a job faces shame and a loss of income. A death may precipitate a move to another state, which means new friends or support system. Next, remember the children. When I led grief support groups in public, middle, and high schools, I sometimes asked the students, who was there for you at the time of the death? A 12-year-old boy from the Amish community said, someone came from the funeral home to talk to us, to his parents in our home when a child in the family was killed. And where were you and your siblings? I asked. We were in another room listening. Give the children focused attention. Sometimes they have seen and heard much with no outlet to express. Once I was called to the hospital to talk to 3 young children who were being cared for by a grandpa before school. While they were waiting for the bus to arrive, Grandpa died instantly of a heart attack before their eyes. They needed meaningful outlets to express their emotions about a world that had just unraveled. Children who are grieving may have a stomachache or act out in ways that are misunderstood. They often are more anxious about what they don't know or just pieces of truth, and if things are explained to them directly, simply, and gently. Somebody, please remember the children. Join, don't push. In counseling, we sometimes talk about the concept of joining. Weep with those who weep. Experts in the study of neuroscience encourage us to enter into the experience of the right brain activity when people are feeling great emotion instead of trying to push them into left brain rational thinking. We say extreme things when we are overwhelmed with grief. I will never love again. My life is over. I don't have anything to live for anymore. And we mean it. We are not ready for someone to talk us out of it or move us to a place we will get to eventually. Join the person where they are. Elijah said some of those irrational things when he was in a time of depression, which often accompanies deep loss. We all know the tendency to want to make things better. A friend wanted to give perspective to a coworker after he lost his adult daughter instantly in a tragic accident. She reminded him that at least he didn't lose his daughter as a result of violence or persecution, as has happened to many. In the throes of grief, his response was immediate and heartfelt. That is unacceptable. Her attempt to give him perspective was unhelpful, at least untimely. One time, a much-loved high schooler had a tragic accident on her way to an athletic event. The student body of this close-knit, small, rural public high school had gathered in the gym the next day as the announcement was made of her death after being taken off life support. Some local pastors of some of the students had gathered with them. They were sincere and well-meaning, but hadn't learned the virtue of joining. They loudly reminded the students that choir members knew some meaningful Christian songs from their church repertoire, and now would be a good time for them to sing one of those. Maybe the pastors were uncomfortable with the scene of crying, distraught high schoolers comforting each other. Maybe they thought they could bypass some of the grieving process. The impact of what they did on at least one student I heard from afterwards was devastating to what they really needed. With frustrated tears, she reported, "Why did they make us do that? We couldn't sing right then. Couldn't they see that?" These moments are not about us and what makes us feel comfortable. Continue the bond. We've heard we need closure, we need to say goodbye. That's why we have visitations and memorial services. But healthy, hopeful grieving also includes continuing bonds with our loved one. I ask questions like, how are you like your grandpa? What about him do you want to carry on? Did your sister have a passion, a legacy, a ministry that you carry too? How could you keep that alive? How can you give honor at a family reunion after a loved one isn't there anymore? Giving people the space, the platform to share stories is often a special gift. And when we do that, we should always be ready to learn from the grieving. They are the experts. Once I asked members of a grief support group to respond to the question, how are you a stronger person since your loss? A woman who had lost her infant son due to sudden infant death syndrome said, "First of all, I don't like your question. I don't feel stronger. I feel fragile and weaker. but I can share with you how I am a better person. Some of us heal best when we engage in instrumental grieving, doing things to work out our grief. We construct a simple casket for a stillborn child. We knit, we garden, we create memory books, we create a shelf of memorabilia in a home, we give a gift in their honor. Sometimes the things that help us transition into a new normal include things that may not be easily understood by others. One evening in the support group for spousal loss, one grieving woman tentatively said that she talks to her deceased husband every night. She tells him about her day, what she's troubled about, what he'd be proud of, but she wanted everyone to know that she wasn't crazy. Several others sighed with great relief. I'm so glad you said that. I sometimes set the table for him. I sleep on his side of the bed, and I didn't know it was okay that I talk with him. Another woman enjoyed the perks of a husband who believed that to be a gentleman meant he always filled his wife's vehicle with fuel. After the elderly husband died, his grieving wife went to the gas station for the very first time, bewildered at how to put gas in her car. She reported that she stood there and had a word for her deceased husband. "Why did you treat me so well? Why did you not teach me to put gas in my car?" The bond continues, and sometimes the conversations. So we walk with the grieving. Wait, weep, listen, and join, and we will all be blessed.
We've run out of time, so we won't do those discussion groups to process this, but I'll turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all those who shared. It was good stuff, as it usually is at these pastors' conferences. And we are going to take a 15-minute break into 2:45, and then we will call everybody back together and have a song. And then Brother Joe, I believe, is going to be sharing with us the cost of multiplication.